Discipline and mental resilience are key factors in achieving personal and professional success. Yet, many people struggle with staying consistent, overcoming setbacks, and maintaining a strong mindset in the face of challenges. What strategies can help individuals develop greater self-discipline and mental toughness? What habits and mindset shifts make the biggest impact? As a part of this series, I've had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Cedric B. Howard, founder and CEO of Howard Executive Consulting. Dr. Howard is a distinguished leader in higher education with nearly 3 decades of experience shaping academic institutions and communities. Throughout his illustrious career, he has earned widespread recognition for his unwavering commitment and significant contributions, which have garnered the respect and admiration of colleagues, students, and industry professionals. He has consistently demonstrated exceptional leadership, project management expertise, and a keen ability to integrate academic theory with real-world applications. His work spans multiple sectors, including corporate America and government, where he has successfully navigated and led complex, high-impact projects. His strategic vision, combined with his meticulous approach to execution, has resulted in consistently successful outcomes, solidifying his reputation as an influential thought leader and innovator. As a role model for emerging professionals, Dr. Howard's dedication to excellence, continuous improvement, and ability to inspire others have made him a trusted figure in academic and professional circles. His legacy continues to shape the future of higher education and beyond. Dr. Howard, it's nice to meet you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Stanley.
You're absolutely welcome. Sounds to me like you've been at hard work, and I have a feeling that somebody who has accomplished as many things as you've accomplished, you probably grew up with a pretty strong foundation, didn't you?
Yeah, I think that it is fair to articulate that for me that, my foundation was grounded in Southern culture. I was born and raised in the deep South in Georgia, actually in Macon, Georgia. And I had a circle influence around me with my grandparents and mother that really shaped and created an environment for me that was rooted in faith, was rooted in family, and most importantly, rooted in a perspective of doing something greater for others than you do for yourself.
So, first of all, I admire that type of background. I think that's so important. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't grow up with that. Um, were the people you grew up around, had they previously gone to college? Had they previously been educated, or were you the first?
No, it is interesting, and a bit of a narrative, and a bit of my story. So I grew up to a single mother. My mother happened to be a gifted athlete in the late 60s, and was a gifted basketball player and had aspirations of playing basketball in college. She would have become the first member of our family to actually apply to college. And unfortunately, she had an intimate relationship with her boyfriend, who happens to be, my father, and I happen to be the product of that relationship. And my father decided that he wasn't ready to be a father, and so my mother said, hey, this is my son. My maternal family was always there. My paternal grandparents, his parents, have always been in my life. But my mother taught me the very first lesson. She says, always have a plan. So when I was born, she gave herself a timeline. And her timeline was, by the time you're one, I want to be off of government assistance because I don't want to continue this cycle of poverty and birth out of wedlock. Because my grandmother, her mother, you go back in all of my generations, and we counted like 6 generations prior to me was all born out of wedlock and all born during their teenage years. And so For me, it was one of those situations where there was a purpose, and there was a clear plan, and there was a determination. But it taught me that despite my birth zip code, it didn't determine the trajectory of my life. And so I went off, to college and became the first in my family to go to college, graduate college. And I think the second lesson I learned was have a plan that is bigger than you can imagine. Have your legacy be much bigger than you. Um, my maternal grandmother was very active in college. Just as an FY, I did go to college on a music scholarship. I was gifted playing an instrument and I went to college on a music scholarship. And was very active, a part of the Greek letter organizations. I was homecoming king, student body president, Greek man of the year. I was very active on my particular college campus because for me, college was life, and I wanted to absorb every nugget of that particular aspect of my life and get engaged in that way. But in June of 1994, at my day of graduation, my grandmother, who was a very short Southern lady, about 5'1", and you can't tell from me, but I'm 6'4". And she came to me. I happened to be one of the speakers at my graduation, um, having been student body president, and she asked for my gown. And she said, "Well, baby, I want your gown." And I said, "Well, no, grandma, I've earned this gown." And she said in her southern tongue, "Baby, I'm going to tell you one more time. Grandma wants your gown." So, of course, I took it off and I gave it and it draped her. And what she did really changed the trajectory of not just my life, but that of my family moving forward. At that point in time, I had 11 cousins, me being the oldest of the grandkids on that side of the family. There was 12 of us total. My grandmother asked the other 11 to get in that gown, and she made a proclamation that I think really serves as the ethos of our family. She said, "Hey, from this standpoint forward, the chains of poverty are officially broken off of our family. It is your goal to bring me your college graduation gown." And that set the trajectory of our family. That number has gone from 12 to 18. As of today, 2025, 17 17 of us have college degrees. Many of us have multiple degrees. And the 18th one, the youngest one, happens to be a senior in college and will graduate this year. And so that manifestation that occurred some 31 years ago is still served as the guiding principle within our family. And so that's the environment that I grew up in. Being very intentional, having a purpose, and making sure that your legacy is much bigger than your lifetime, because your legacy can be much bigger than you.
She was a great leader, wasn't she?
Very powerful leader, and in ways that you would never imagine. And that's oftentimes when I'm telling my story, and people kind of see me with 4 degrees and 2 doctorate degrees, so they hear about my kids that are extremely successful. And I said, first start with having a very clear purpose. What are your strengths? What are your beliefs? What are considered to be your hates, your habits, your attitudes, your beliefs, your expectations determine how you view yourself, and the environment that you're in. We have learned that it is important to understand that having a clear purpose, making sure that you practice self-reflection is a key component in establishing the trajectory of not just you, but that of your family.
You talk about self-reflection. That's one of the reasons I always talk about healthy exercise, and I'm a big advocate of walking. And one of the hidden benefits of walking is the mental
Yeah.
benefit. And I always tell people when you go on a walking program, you meet some very interesting people. And would you care to guess who the most interesting person is that you meet? Yourself.
Set.
Absolutely. You're looking at them right now. And it's so wonderful. I mean, I meditate in addition to my walking. My walking in and of itself is meditative. And most of the time I'm alone while I do it. I'm listening to meditative music in my earbuds while I'm out walking, and it gets you thinking. And that's when I do some of my most creative, best thinking. And you get to know yourself. And also, the more you get to know yourself, you learn to believe in yourself. It sounds to me
Mm,
like your grandmother and your mother and everyone around you taught you to believe in yourself.
yeah. Yeah. I would also add my paternal grandparents, my grandfather and grandmother on that side. That was the only married couple that I knew. And the reason I wore a bow tie today is the same reason that I wore a bow tie at the age of 2 or 3. If you ever see my pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, high school, commencement pictures, all having a bow tie, and that is all because my grandfather wore a bow tie every day. And even though he was a maintenance man at a youth detention center, he showed up with a bow tie on um, every day because he always talked about that he wanted those young men and those boys that were in a youth detention center to see someone that looked like them in a professional way. And he wanted for them to aspire to see their situations beyond their current. He wants to see them to see beyond their current situations. And so that's self-reflection is extremely important. Self-reflection will teach you the value of self-awareness. And self-reflection will also help you to understand and develop that resiliency, the ability to bounce back when you are going through times of stress and you're going through challenges. Do you have that internal drive in order to say, I can do this? Because um, most of that drive and that resilient mindset comes from self-talk. Oftentimes, you hear me say, as a part of one of my speeches, that the greatest struggle you have to overcome is the one within yourself. Can you win the battle of your mind doing challenging situations? And oftentimes, the challenging situations is that battle that's going on between your ears when you're talking yourself out of something that you know that you should do, a decision that you know that it's important for you to make, the concerns that people may say about you, whether they're legitimate concerns or not, how you anticipate what they're going to be. When you begin to invest in yourself and you're aware of what's important to you, all those other decisions become easy because the self-talk will teach you to overcome the obstacles that are in front of you and use those obstacles as stepping stones into your future rather than the stumbling blocks of your past. And that is an anchor tenet that I would say any leader develop positive self-talk and self-reflection and self-awareness as a part of any decision-making process that you undertake on a daily basis.
Agreed. I always say that the most powerful thing you can do is to learn to believe in your abilities, your talents, and your ideas.
Yes.
And in the world, quite often will beat us down. It'll beat us over
Yes.
the head. And I always say that we don't need to help it out. The world beats you up enough as it is. Don't help it out. And I know in my own personal experiences, um, my career-wise, I've always been successful. Being a CPA first and then an attorney. And what happened with me was I was talking to my older brother in the middle of an argument. He dared me to go to law school. And I said, that
Mm,
sounds like a good idea. And I went, changed my life. So that's why you should listen. Sometimes, you may not agree with somebody, but a word of wisdom may come out of their mouth.
that's right.
So always successful in that area. But I had always, up until I was 50, was massively obese,
Mm,
carried all this weight. And then I decided 4 months before I was going to turn 50, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. I'm wasting my potential. If I don't do something pretty soon, I'm going to be dead.
yeah.
That's about as cold and hard as it gets.
Yeah.
And I made a decision right then and there that I was going to do something. And as Tony Robbins says, never leave the scene of a decision without taking action.
Mm,
Realization of that decision. And fortunately, I did. I started making changes. And as confident as I am, the experience of losing over 200 pounds and keeping it off blew my mind. It did. It blew my mind. And it taught me two things. First thing it taught me was that if I could do this, there's obviously so much more out there that I can do. And now I need to go find it and go do it.
uh-huh.
And then the second thing is that if I could do this, as special as I am, I'm not special at all. And if I can do this, so can everybody else.
Yeah.
And so, and and part of the problem is we don't always believe in ourselves. And when we grow up, you were very fortunate. I was very fortunate. You grew up around people who taught you to believe in yourself, who gave you a sense of purpose, who told you what you were going to do and then made sure you did it. Um, I had the same thing. My father had a fifth grade education. He had to quit school during the Depression. But he knew he didn't he didn't know how to help me with my schoolwork, but he knew that I needed to do it, and he made sure I did it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and that type of thing. So it's all important. Um, you were talking to me before. You have a little bit of your own weight loss story too, don't you?
Oh yes. Oh yes. When you grow up in what some consider to be a disadvantaged from a disadvantaged background, and you grow up in a poverty-stricken community, assisted living, or I should say, government-supported environment, some would consider to be the projects. Um, you take on a lot of habits that are not healthy, including eating foods, taking on stressors that are not healthy for you. And if you see some early pictures of me, especially when I was in my 20s and 30s, you're going to see someone who is 300 plus pounds. When I got married, I think I was 305 pounds. And that was 28 years ago. And I got up to almost 400 pounds. And then I had an aha moment, what I consider to be an inflection point. My father passed at what I consider to be an early age, especially for an adult of 58. And as I was at his funeral and I was sitting there and I was morbidly obese, he was also morbidly obese. And I just realized that was not the life that I desired. And I had an inflection point and I actually changed my version of myself. And I wanted to make sure the version of that I was becoming was one that was not steeped in fear or pain or stress. It was steeped in purpose, excellence, and focus. And so I changed how I looked at my life and set a very aggressive goal. I wanted to lose by the time I got 40, and that was probably several years from 40. I wanted to lose and get down to a weight that was acceptable. That was around 250. So that meant I had to lose, roughly about 120, 130 pounds. But with that, I had to overcome some fears. And so um, one of my fears was swimming. Another of my fear was running because it's too painful. And so as a part of my journey, we took on a sport of doing triathlons and actually became a sprint triathlete as part of my journey. So I figured if I was going to do it, I was going to do it right, that I was going not to allow the traumas of my youth continue with me as I began this journey. So of course I had to learn how to swim. And actually my first triathlon was in St. Petersburg, Florida. And so I was swimming actually in the Gulf. And then I had to come off and do the biking, and then I had to conclude with the run. And that served as my trajectory, and that served as my springboard to enhance myself. Of course, my self-talk uh, had to be refined. It had to, I tell people all the time, sometimes you got to renegotiate with yourself who you're going to become. And I had to renegotiate with myself to say, I deserve better. I deserve to have discipline. I deserve to invest in myself and my health and my mental well-being. Going through that transition was extremely difficult, but it was worthwhile. And so, that's kind of part of my journey, and the health of decisions and the health of lifestyle and the health of boundaries that are extremely important. That includes that I had to also remove myself from certain situations, including people, because when I was with those people, they wanted to celebrate around food. And I had to begin to say to them, I can celebrate with you, but we don't necessarily need to have food. We don't need to have a big feast. We can just have fellowship and enjoy each other, not always around eating. And so that was another one of the healthy boundaries that I had to establish within my life.
What I learned to do was I just go to the event where there's food and I don't eat.
Mm,
I had one of those this past weekend. I went to my best friend's son is getting married. And so I went to a party, pre-wedding party for them. And there was all this food around there. I didn't eat.
hmm hmm
And I mean, I know when I first started my journey, my mother-in-law thought I was nuts. And he used to bother her. She'd take the whole family out to dinner and I wouldn't eat. And I said, I'm here for the company, not for the food. And I finally told her, I said, don't let, I said, what I'm doing is my own craziness in my head. Don't let the craziness in my head get into your head. And just stick to who you are. Know who you are, stick to who you are. Don't worry about criticism. And finally, after about 4 or 5 years, she finally accepted it. And she said, I don't know what you're doing. I don't totally understand it, but it sure seems to be working. I'm proud of you. Keep doing it. And, and then she stopped, she was okay with it after that. But
Yeah.
yeah, you have to stick to it. Can
You
you
know,
tell
I,
us?
I,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
say as a part of that process that the negative things that your enemies say and the positive things that your friends say are usually the same thing. And your enemies are not necessarily, adversaries. Some of your enemies are people who are talking negatively about the journey that you're undertaking. And why are you doing this? You don't need to do that. You look well. Yeah, that's not bad. That's just some part of the process. No, if I have uh, a situation that I'm trying to undertake, I realize that the process determines the product that I produce. And so, as a part of my process, I have to realize that what you're saying should be taken into consideration. And so that if it's not part of the process that I'm trying to produce, the product that I'm trying to produce, then I just eliminate it from my life, and I don't incorporate it into my thought mechanism because I don't need to incorporate that as a part of my self-talk.
Yes, I remember when I really got going on the losing the weight, I had to buy new clothes like 4 or 5 times along.
Mhm.
And I remember the first time after I lost like 50, 60 pounds, I went out and I bought myself a bunch of clothes. And I took all of my old clothes and I gave them away.
Mm.
And all my friends, some of my family too, they said, why'd you give your clothes away? What happens if you put the weight back on and you need them? And I turned and looked at them. I said, thanks for the vote of confidence. You know, I said, I'm not going to need that stuff. I'm not going back. And it's like, sometimes it's like, I don't know if you ever read The Art of War, but Sun Tzu, he calls it death ground. You have, you have no choice but to fight to the death. Get rid of the clothes. I'm on death ground. I have no choice to go back. And so I don't. And I've done that every step of the way. And it was a pleasure to sit there and do that. In closing, can you tell us about your book, Unshakable Leadership?
Oh wow, that is powerful. So, throughout my 31 years of working in higher education and my work as a consultant with corporate leaders and in corporate America, I realized um, that even leaders had an interesting time doing challenging situations. And yeah, you can go through a workshop, you can go through a mastermind, but it's critical to write a book to serve as a part of their toolkit. And so, unshakable leadership really was a book that I wrote to help leaders to transition out of being managers to being visionary leaders, to develop resiliency, self-awareness, and most importantly, to institute sustainable confidence for long-term growth of themselves and their particular organization. And when I wrote it, I thought I would just use it and hand it out as a part of my speaking engagements and work with the various corporate and educational leaders. And they were like, hey, can you put this like on Amazon or a platform? Because I need for my staff to read this because I'm going through this transformative experience. And I'm saying things to them, and I can give them, a handout, or I can allow them to use my books, but my book is all written up with notes. So can you share this in a way that I can have it as a professional development opportunity and as a part of their professional growth plan? And so unshakable leadership is really a tool for leaders to evolve and to help them to be more intentional, more resilient, help them to bounce back when things become difficult and challenges arise, and most importantly, to help them to make more disciplined decisions as a part of setting the vision for their particular organization and or company.
Wonderful. It's very good that you did that and that you had that information and that you're giving back, you're sharing your life experience,
Mm-hmm.
sharing what was taught to you. And I I believe that you inherently know something that I've learned as well, which is people who are in a position where people who are in a good position where they've achieved things, it's not an obligation, it is their privilege to help others. And that's what I believe you're doing.
Yes, no, thank you. It is truly an honor and a pleasure for me to have the ability to assist others, to develop others. To me, it is part of the call. I was able to give a handout when I was younger. Now I'm trying to provide a handout because I think that we're going to need leaders that are emotionally intelligent, emotionally sound. We're going to need organizations that are making disciplined decisions and that can be agile and make sure that they're adapt to whatever situations that they're undertaking. And that starts with the leadership. And the leaders set the vision by which the organization follows. And if the leaders don't know how to set a vision and they're that agile, the organization is not going to bode well. And so, it's a privilege for me to have the opportunity to write a book, and it's even greater honor for me to have a book that people actually want to read and to apply and to ask questions of. And that was truly something that when I began this journey many years ago of graduating college and becoming a professional, I never thought that this was kind of be a part of my journey. And very blessed and honored that it is. And it's my obligation to make sure that I'm taking heed of this opportunity and investing in others the way that, my family and other leaders have invested in me.
Not only is it your obligation, it is your privilege.
Mm,
You get to do it.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
And that makes it fun when you do that. Is there anything you want to add in closing before we wrap up?
No, I think the most important thing is when you think about, who you are in your journey, that, we can always say that we'll get around, to it. It's not a resolution. We're going to visit this once a year. No, start today, and start with a plan. Write down what you would like to become. And, let's begin the process of you becoming that, realizing that you're going to renegotiate with yourself. And that is the greatest struggle, because when you overcome the struggle within yourself and the battles within yourself, all the other struggles become irrelevant. And that serves as the springboard for you becoming the purpose-driven person that you actually are, and the leader that we need and desire in our society.
Thank you very much. This has been a pleasure.
Oh, a pleasure and honor's mine.